Can you wet sand primer? Yes, absolutely. You could wet sand primer. Um, I like wet sanding in general because it saves your paper, and you get a lot of less dust. Okay, you don't have so much dust laying around. But yes, you can wet sand primer. Just make sure that if you're going to reprime it or paint over it, just make sure it's dry. Just make sure it's really dry. That's all. Make sure you could always get a heat gun or a blow dryer and blow the area off. Make sure it's nice and dry before you put any paint on top of it. But you guys got to remember, primer is not a sealer. Okay, some primers you can mix a little extra reducer in it, and it turns into a sealer because it lays on thinner and flows out better. But that isn't really a sealer. Even a sealer isn't a sealer. And I know you're probably thinking, hey, Tony, what does that mean? A sealer is not a sealer. Well, a sealer is basically a sealer before you put on base coat. Okay. If you really want to think about having something sealed from the elements and weather, it's actually putting paint on it, putting your base coat on it, and your clear coat on it. That basically seals your whole body work, your primer, your paint, everything into a cured paint that is protected from the elements, right? So a primer, if you just primer a car and drive around with it, it's really not sealed. If you seal your car and drive around with it, it's really not sealed because moisture can affect it, and it will affect it, and you're going to get dirt grime stuck in it and all that. And you're going to have to make sure you really wash it out, sand it out really good, wash it first and then sand it and then reprime it and then paint it. So, some people think just because they do some body work and prime it, they can drive it around for a year like that. It's really not sealed from the elements because it still absorbs moisture. Okay. But then it dries also. Right. So anyway, hopefully that kind of gave you some little, background information on that type of stuff. Mr. Cletus says, what's up, Tony? I'm about to start the body work on my Miata. What year is your Miata, man? Let me know. I need to rewatch that old video with the green Miata. How should I go about taking off that texture material around the bottom? Well, you definitely need to watch that complete video series because I literally took all that off. You basically get some 80 grit sandpaper on an orbital sander and just sand it off. Doesn't take long, plus the Miatas are so small. And you only got the door and a little bit of the quarter panel and part of the fender, the bottom rocker panel fender. I mean, very little. I mean, I think one side will probably take you 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe around 45 minutes. You're going to go through a good 10 to 12 sheets of paper per side, maybe 15. But you'll get it off. It sands right off. 80 grit. You could even go 60 grit, but I mean, 80 grit will do the job. Just sand it off. It'll sand right off. Just go down to bare metal. Once you get it down to metal, you can hit it with some epoxy primer, followed by 2K filler primer. 1990 first gen Miata. I love them. The last one I did was a 95 M edition, the green one. 95 M edition. I put a sunroof in the hardtop. It was so awesome. That was the second time I did that actually, and people just love that custom. Little customness that I did to that. Adhesion, where's the truth? What do you mean by that? So to guarantee good paint adhesion, you want to make sure you're painting over a sanded surface, a sanded and prepped surface, with at least, at minimum 400 grit sandpaper, at the coarsest. I wouldn't go coarser. I wouldn't go 300, 320. 400 is pretty much where you want to be, and not 400p. Okay, 400. I'm going to be actually making a video on the P grade sandpapers versus your regular sandpapers, and I'll be posting that shortly. Well, if you're going to be spraying a silver and you're worried about tiger striping, go with a fine silver. Like the thicker, the coarser your metallics, the more issues you're going to have with tiger striping. So if you're using a silver with very fine metallic, then it'll be easier than spraying with a thicker metallic silver. So when you're ordering your silver, just tell them you want a fine metallic. You know, like go through the paint book and just look at it. Just got to look at it, you know. How do you prevent rust from forming? Well, I mean, probably live in maybe the middle of the US, like in Vegas or somewhere like that. It's a good way to prevent it. You know, but if you're on the coast and you're exposed to salt air and salt water and like and you got, or you're in the East Coast and you got like these guys like you know, putting salt on the streets to melt the snow, then you're going to end up with rust in your quarter panels. I mean, it just happens. It's I don't, you know, there was an electronic device called the Rustivator, where it's basically an electronic device that you ground onto the body of your car, you know, under the hood, and it's supposed to, it stays on and it's supposed to prevent rust. So you might want to look into some preventing Rustivator, it's called. My dad used to sell them back in the day. I don't know what happened to that product. I never really heard of it. Why is my resprayed bumper on my Lexus chipping like a mofo? Did the body shop skimp on clear coat? Probably they skimped on clear coat, or they didn't sand your bumper properly, which messed up your adhesion on that clear coat, and that's why it's chipping. Probably why. They just did a crap job on it, dude. I'm sorry. Yeah, man. Okay. I've talked with a couple guys working at body shops. They told me that 400 grit is too coarse to use before painting. They say there's good adhesion even with 1,000 grit. So if you believe in that and you want to go with that, then go ahead, bro. It's all you. Go with 1,000 grit. You know, I've been doing body work for 25 years. Know tons of people in the industry. And 400 grit is the perfect grit to paint over. 1,000 grit is way too fine. But if you want to do it, then go ahead. I mean, I'm not going to stop you. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. So I teach all my VIP guys sand down with 400 to 600 grit, because as you're using a 400 grit, as you're using the paper, it'll turn to 500 to 600 kind of as you're using it. So that's pretty much the sweet spot where you want to be at. If you want to go 1,000, you could do 1,000, and in a couple of years, you might have the issue that Jason's having, where your clear coat's chipping. So, you know, or flaking off, because it's not enough tooth grit. It's not enough sandpaper grit in the paint to, you know, for your paint materials to stick. So it's up to you, man. You know, if you're hearing all these guys do it and you want to do it, then do it. Okay. I'm not going to convince you otherwise. I'm just telling you, all of the experience I've had and just with a ton of other people, you know, we're all on the same page there. Talking about flow coating, but even with flow coating, I like to use 800 grit. So if you're going to be flow coating clear coat over a custom paint job, like you have, you know, you sprayed clear, 2 coats of clear, it dried, looks really nice. And then you want to put 2 more coats of clear on it. I sand with 800 grit. 1,000's too fine. 800 grit, and then you can spray 2 more coats of clear coat and you're good. I bet all those guys, body shops, customers, front bumpers are chipping like a mofo, just like mine. So yeah, 400 grit works great and gives you good tooth. Exactly. So it is what it is. And 400 is actually too fine for, it's not too fine. But when you're doing base coat, clear coat painting, you want to have your prep a little finer. So 400 grit is where you want to be with that. You can spray single stage over it, but single stage paint is a lot thicker in material. So you could actually finish prepping with like a 360, even a 320 grit, and single stage will fill it up and cover it. No problem. Like the Good Van project we did, some areas I finished with 320 grit, and you can't even tell. The white paint just filled it all up, and it looks super smooth and glossy. And, you know, that video series is in VIP as well, so you can check that out. And I'll see you next week. For all you guys checking out the replay, don't forget to click over here to grab that free training at radspaintformula.com or in the links down below. Other than that, I will see you next week, probably around the same time. I might change the time to about 9 p.m. Eastern time from next week. I'm not sure yet, but I'll let you guys know by email. All right. Talk to you soon. Have a good weekend, and peace out. Thanks, guys.